Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to FinStep Asia Token Bytes and Decoded. We are continuing on the topic of artificial intelligence and the impact that it's having on financial services. And we're speaking to our founders. And today is a pleasure to have Mr. Park, who is the co-founder and CEO of Votee, one of Hong Kong's homegrown and oldest AI companies. I've known Mr. Park for quite some time now. Initially, when I came here in Hong Kong and had finished my MBA, got to meet him because he was an investment banker and a trader, heading trading at the time in Bank of China, I think in 2016.
More sales and syndicate, and
Yes,
then,
yeah.
and then fixed income.
So welcome to our podcast. Great to have you. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we've been meeting on and off, but finally culminated in the last few months in that sense. And I think it's lovely to, a lot of people right now are transitioning in their careers and at a very inflection point in their careers. But we'd love to get our audience an insight of your career. You started off, from Canada, and then you were in investment banking, and then you transitioned to becoming a founder. Would love to hear what was your motivation to get in investment banking, and then the motivation for transitioning as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us. Thanks for having me, and it's been a long time. I've known you for, I think, close to 10 years, maybe?
Yeah, 10 years.
10 years or so.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in Toronto, and so I started my banking career in Toronto. I had a little bit of career before then, working in civic engagement. But within banking, I started off in retail banking, and slowly kind of moved my way up into commercial banking, and then into investment banking or capital markets. So capital markets in Hong Kong, I was there for since 2005 to 2021. And started with JP Morgan, Standard Bank, and Bank of China.
Yeah.
So that was a really good time. I mean, this is during the boom and bust.
Yeah.
08, and also during sort of the roll up in sort of credit within China as well. And so experienced all that. It was really fun, really great. I had a lot of learning opportunities. I moved into to become a founder because I guess in life it's more of a sort of aspiration, which is to kind of build something that's impactful.
Yeah.
I want to kind of go back to my roots of civic engagement, which was the sort of small little experience I had before going into banking, and wanted to create something that has a little bit more impact on how we sort of think, how we think of policies, how we think about what people think.
Yeah.
And so that inspiration sort of made me pursue that founder's path. And so Votee was created. Votee was essentially vote with a double E.
Yeah.
And to kind of think about what people are thinking, sentiment analysis, and all that stuff. So big data in general.
Okay. And you had kind of a two-phase in your founder journey as a career, right? So you started off about 12 years ago, initially as a solo founder, and then you came back again. So do you want to talk about how that happened and why you went back before?
Yeah, I guess in short, I wasn't well planned first time, and so I started Votee 2013, so about 13 years ago.
Nice.
And during that time, it was wanting to kind of create a massive platform, allow people to kind of put their thoughts and all that kind of stuff. So big data. And at that time, me and Jackie, which is my co-founder, we created this, but then it didn't really have product market fit.
Sure.
So I guess for capital reasons, I went back to banking and did banking for 6.5 years before moving back into Votee. And Jackie was still there, of course, and he's still here. And so we're now kind of building the next phase of Votee.
Yeah.
And so I've been back since 2021 January.
Okay.
And so
that's your 5-year anniversary.
Yeah, 5-year anniversary. Yeah, a little bit more than 5 years. Yeah.
What brought you back? Like, what were in the sense, a lot of people, it's not a lot, but a few people do explore going and following their passion where they want to build either a product or build a company that has an impact, or aspirationally what they wanted to do when they started their careers, and they try, it doesn't work. Quite often it doesn't work, and then they go back to their professional careers. Now, fortunately, you had a co-founder who was continuing to build Votee, but what were those conditions that said, okay, now is the right time for you to get back into and transition back into becoming a founder?
Yeah, I think there was a personal side of things, and there's also a business side of things as well. So 2018, when I was still in Bank of China, obviously me and Jackie, during my banking years, we still had daily conversations. We made a strong, not pivot, but push into adding AI into big data, right? And so this is when you had really smart people like Noam Chomsky and Alina Jones. They wrote this paper called "Attention Is All You Need," and that kind of became the start of the transformer.
Okay.
And we started to add that and play with that to add that within big data, for example, sentiment analysis. And so we had a big push into AI. And 2020, end of 2020, I think it was a couple of things. One was we had COVID.
Yes.
And so the whole work shift kind of changed. And so that kind of was sort of an inflection point. It's like, okay, is this a signal type of thing? Second thing is, during the AI buildup, we started to have a little bit more traction and a little bit more product market fit.
Okay.
And so that was also another signal. And then finally, I think it was just with encouragement of just friends and, obviously, I took a big leave of absence in some sense from Jackie. And so I think that kind of prompted me to go back, and family was okay. And, so I had the guts, and so I just jumped right back in.
And it takes a lot of guts during COVID to do that, in the sense you're talking about a period where there's so much uncertainty, you don't know where things are going, economy, jobs, etc. And then here you're going into a phase, into a startup where, yes, product market fit is starting to become, but, and I've seen the other side of it, right? Where when I started FinStep Asia in late 2019, our aim was to bridge India and Hong Kong from a venture building side of things, right? And to bring in Indian B2B firms here, take capital over. First, we had to pause because of COVID, and then there were geopolitics that changed. So we had to scrap that. So now I'm in a situation where there's no longer that viability of running that. Now I have to switch. There's no viability of going back and getting a job per se, right? But I mean, it is, as you said, it's courageous to do it, and people underplay how much family support, friend support is important in taking that decision, right? The emotional side of being a founder, that stability that's needed, right? Fortunately for me, I've had my wife being a big support as well. So I can continue to aspirationally try becoming a founder. But yeah, I think that's probably played a part in that decision as well for you.
Yeah. No, family support, massive. In some sense, if I had no family, I would do it as well. So without family, I would do it. But with family, you have to consider a lot more things.
Yeah.
And if that suddenly doesn't become as big of a concern because your wife is supportive, and your friends and your previous backers are supportive, there's no way I would have done it again.
So now you're back at Votee, with Jackie, starting to see product market fit. But maybe it will be helpful for our audience to get a sense of the Votee journey, right? You're right in that 2013 to 2017, 18 was that big data move where everybody looking at, there's a lot of data, and the whole conversation, how do you do something with it? And data is the new oil conversations, right? So what fundamentally changed, you would say, that allowed for Votee to start gathering traction and picking up more clients and services as a way?
Yeah, so the Votee that I sort of went back in and where it is today are kind of different as well, given Gen AI. But
sure,
when we had sort of small product market fit was more on big data, social listening, surveys, and all that kind of stuff. And so we had more people kind of going into that. And then you also had, because of COVID, you also had people who want to kind of do things that were not face-to-face. And so that allowed for digital surveys, more people to kind of be on computers, and therefore you had more data online. And so social listening was becoming sort of ripe for that.
Sure.
Social listening is not new technology, of course. But, fast forward 2022, end of 2022, ChatGPT.
Yes. Yeah.
I had a newer version. The older ChatGPT 2, it was good, but it felt sentient, but it wasn't really sentient. So they'll always kind of ask you questions back. So I was like, "Oh, how are you?" It's like, "Oh, great, I'm good." So why did you ask how was I?
Yeah.
So it was kind of repeating stuff.
Yeah.
But when you had ChatGPT 3, or the later versions of ChatGPT, it became a powerful movement, and you had users go from 0 to a million
Yeah.
within record time. So we then moved into Gen AI at that time, and so we were experimenting with different things. Uh, how does company use it? How does governments use it? And then during this time, we also contributed some pieces, articles, and then that led us to speak to one of our partners, Amazon, and they kind of ticketed with the idea of building Cantonese version.
Yes.
And that's when we kind of sort of went all into that side of things. So I guess a little bit about Votee. So Votee is a company that's looking to empower and accelerate AGI for emerging markets.
Okay.
And why emerging markets is because a lot of the biggest problem, or where global models fall short, is when it comes down to local languages.
Yeah.
Right. So in Hong Kong Cantonese, it's a very spoken language.
Correct.
And so if you use the big global tech companies, because of how Hong Kong does code switching, you also have slangs, colloquial terms. It starts to hallucinate, and it's fine if it's sort of consumer grade, but if you go into banks, corporates, governments, you need accuracy as high as 5 plus, and so that's where again global models fall short, and that's where we exceed.
Now it's interesting. I'll touch on two parts. I want to come to that AGI conversation.
Sure.
Because that's quite interesting to have a conversation on that. But when we think about startups that build, usually you have the TAM, song, all of that conversation. And when we talk about Cantonese speakers, we're talking about 7 million in Hong Kong and maybe about 10 to 20 million in the Guangdong province, maybe a little bit more, maybe 15 million, all in less than a 50 million or so.
85 million, I think,
85 million
based on Wikipedia. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, with people in say Malaysia and a few others. Now that's a smallish market in terms of not necessarily everyone having Cantonese as their native language. Quite a few maybe English speakers as well, or very familiar with English. So why look at a language that is smaller? Is that for you phase one, or is this where you do see that can scale quite a lot from a revenue generation and growth perspective?
Yeah. So one, it's not. I would say it's definitely the start.
Okay.
We're working on a few other languages at the moment.
That's great. Okay.
And so I think our path is it started from Hong Kong Cantonese, and it's going to grow towards more endangered languages. Languages are spoken by 50,000 people. That's our sort of mission.
Okay.
And so Hong Kong itself, even though it sounds small, it's still a massive TAM. If you look at Hong Kong, it's more than $400 billion worth of annual GDP. Out of that 400 billion plus, 90% is service oriented, and that's where generative AI excels. And so if you kind of look at that, then that's a massive TAM. And if you take sort of growth in phases, even just 10% is a massive play. If you also look at Hong Kong from sort of Cantonese in a sort of global scale, it's 85 million people based on Wikipedia, based on stats. So this includes overseas Chinatown, includes countries like you said, Malaysia, Guangdong province. And then if you sort of look at the flip side, there's maybe 7 billion people who want to learn Cantonese, so that opens up a big market as well. So not small, but also not our sort of be all end all. Hong Kong Cantonese is our first one, but we are working on Southeast Asia.
Okay.
We're also working on African languages as well.
Okay. That's interesting. The reason I was saying that I find it very exciting and interesting at the same time, because we were having a discussion a week back where we we're talking about India, right? As a country where officially we have over 30 languages, official languages, because 30 plus states, and each state has at least one language, in a lot of cases, multiple languages. And there are about 500 languages plus dialects in India, where you account for our various tribes and, variation. Like I'm from Karnataka, which is where Bangalore is. I'm from
Okay.
city of Bangalore. And in Bangalore, you probably have about 3 or 4 versions of Kannada, right?
Oh, wow.
And some, it's very distinct. It's almost like the traditional, Putonghua versus Gongonghua, or Cantonese versus Mandarin almost in some instances.
Okay.
Like you can understand 50%, you can't understand the other 50%. And some are they transition. And we were talking about how in fintech, a lot of, in the initial phases, a lot was a very general, be all and all, let's serve everybody kind of conversation. But, and it was replicas of other models from overseas in India. And then it transitioned to being more colloquial.
Right.
Fintech apps were being built in a native language for a state.
Right.
Because that state had a 50 million, 100 million, in some instances about 150 to 200 million population, which in itself, as you would think about, are the size of countries, right? Vietnam or a bunch of European countries, easily more than that.
Sure.
And so we don't question, from some senses, let's take somebody building something in Italian is not necessarily a very large TAM as well, but people do build it and it's needed. And that's why I wanted to get to where that's happening and going into the other languages. Right?
Yeah.
Because else you risk, from an AI perspective, we already seeing exclusion, right? The tech exclusion conversation that's coming in because some people don't have access. And as the languages go away, then it's also starts becoming challenging for a good service for people, right? If you're conversing in a second language or third language, in many instances, doesn't have the same impact from a prompting perspective. As we know, it's a very nuanced perspective. So I would want to understand, when you're building a Gen AI model, right? Are you using some of the open source and relying on some of the existing Gen AI models and building on top of that? Or was this from scratch, in some senses, training your model and building it from that perspective, especially given how the language has so many nuances to it?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So there's a couple of ways to approach languages. The first way is to just kind of do translation services, but that's again where global models fall short.
Yeah.
Right. So if you just translate one for one, or if let's say the culture isn't built into it, therefore expressions aren't built into it. So if I say, it's raining cats and dogs, if the model doesn't understand that, then it's probably not a good model.
Yeah.
Right? Now, obviously, in English, all that is captured, but if you go into local languages, that all is sort of gone in some sense. So the way we approach it is through a CPT, continuous pre-training methods. You need to have your own data set because you're pre-training it. And you also have to be able to correctly classify a lot of these lingos, expressions, things that, in Cantonese, there are things, slangs that you can't even write down.
Yes.
So you need to even capture that as well. So it's that process where data readiness is required. We do it from a CPT perspective, and so we look at it from a perspective of spoken language. Because if you believe in sort of embodied AI, like robotics, and if that one day becomes the future, but it only speaks written Cantonese, then it feels kind of weird, right? If you want to continue to talk to somebody or a robot in the same way, then that needs to be fixed. So it's very fundamental in that sense.
And how long did that take for you guys to get to a phase where you felt, we are at an accuracy level which is enterprise ready? Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah. So the model itself is again a very generic Cantonese model. So when you want to be enterprise grade, then you need to sub in domain knowledge.
Yeah.
If you assume that that's already there, then the models are, we're working for banks, corporates, and you need an accuracy rate of 90-95% or even higher. So it's basically at that level. Now we obviously have newer versions coming out.
Okay.
And so that's going to be even more accurate. But when it comes down to domain, it depends on what kind of domain knowledge. So enterprise ready for sure, but it also needs domain knowledge as well.
And how long do you think that took from a inflection point or time period from building those models to be ready? One at a, I'm going to use the term very loosely, general purpose use, and the second being enterprise ready, let's say financial services, which the background we come from.
Yeah. So for us, I guess the experience was the data part took us about 6 months.
Okay.
And then the full part, including training and evaluation as well. We also built Hong Kong's first benchmark, MMLU, they call it. The first benchmark, which is, is it good for Hong Kong? Are the guardrails there and all that kind of stuff? So we did all that. So from data, preparing data all the way to training to evaluation to building the benchmark took us about 9 months.
Nice. Okay, so it's pretty fast from that perspective as well.
Yeah. The going back to the benchmark, it was featured in Vienna in one of the top AI conferences, ACL.
Yeah.
It's much faster now. So if we were to do it today again for, let's say, a 7B model, you're talking about less than half that time.
And I may get a bit more technical here, but from terms of parameters and deployment, etc., how intensive it is and how large is it? If you want to talk about that.
Sure. The first one we open sourced it, so it's 7B model, 7 billion. We have version 2, version 3. We have bigger models as well, but that's used for proprietary purposes for enterprises. And so those are parameters. We started off with a couple 100 million tokens. We grew that token base. A couple 100 million is very small. Yeah. But for a low resource language, it's about average. But we grew that exponentially as well. So those were the technical specs, if you will. And
I'll probably now just pivot a little bit to taking this conversation in terms of use cases, right? When you're speaking to enterprises and governments and others, if you had to pick your top 3 use cases, what have been the top 3 use cases for Votee in the, I would say, one local market in Hong Kong, but I'd also be interested in the international market if we were to extend it outside of Hong Kong.
Yeah, so the top 3 use case would be in very broad terms, and I think we'll dig in a little bit deeper. The first,
can you 3 forums?
Sure. Would be on training.
Okay.
Not necessarily the first, but top 3. Training, customer service.
Okay.
And then 3 would be on compliance.
Okay.
So those are broadly the 3 things. And if you want to break it down in customer service, for example, it would be understanding or sort of a co-pilot to kind of guide the caller to actually having a virtual bot speak to clients, or chatbot or voice bot. Those would be sort of the breakdowns of customer service.
Conversational AI.
Correct. Yeah. For training would be literally having training, for example, soon to be teachers or soon to be therapists or whatnot, and that kind of stuff. You need a human to kind of go through, but now you're going to have more AI led stuff. The compliance part is very nuanced and more technical, but for banks, for example, it'll be like call monitoring to what we call compliance gaps, right? So if there's a new ordinance from MA or for SFC, how do you ensure that part is included to your policies? Part of it is using AI to understand the nuances of the new policy and the gaps that you have in your current framework. So those are the things that are used for.
Okay. And what other type of institutions you're seeing getting traction from?
At the moment, it's the 3 things: corporates, governments, and financial services. So we're part of the HKMA sandbox.
Yeah.
So both the
Gen AI sandbox, right?
The Gen AI sandbox, and also the I forget the exact name, FSS 3.1.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're part of both, and so and you can see that there's actually a lot of interest coming from banks to adopt these things. What they need is really just the framework, the base, the foundation, the sandbox for them to play with it.
And I want to expand on that, right? In the sense, when we spoke about compliance and banks, talking strictly about compliance, a lot of times when they're bringing in new vendors and new technology, and in this case, both, right, tends to be a long onboarding process and a lot of checks, due diligence, etc., etc. What were the challenges you faced in that, and how did you overcome that? Because it can be quite a drain, both resources and emotionally, and as a business owner as well, right? Dealing with this, and you've been on the other side, but
yeah, no, it is. In Hong Kong, maybe globally as well, onboarding, you know, big institutions, listed institutions, you have a lot of checks and balances, and you have bureaucracy, you have their own internal procedures that we have to follow. So yeah, it's in some sense, the first few ones was tough,
Okay.
but you just have to continue to kind of hammer down. Going back to the sandbox created by MA and Cyberport, I think those were big help because it gave the confidence for banks, or even gave them the mandate, the power to say, hey, look, I'll partner with you and I'll do something. So those were big lifts, if you will. And then obviously you have to be solving a pain point. So you also have to understand the workflow. Luckily, I was in banks as well, so I understood it a little bit. And so with all that, I think as a sort of a wholesome or sort of total approach, I think worked.
Okay.
Other than that, though, without one or the other, I think would have been much harder.
I think the POC piece also that's very useful because banks have now, and that's just a bit of credit to the HKMA and in general pushing a lot of these sandboxes to bring in more innovation and allowing banks to kind of have a little bit more leeway to and elevate some of their concerns of, oh, what let me say,
Correct.
How will this go? And then it helps on the other side for startups to engage before getting fully onboarded as such.
Correct. That's our part as well.
Yeah, they've been a great help. I want to just move as we come towards the end of the conversation per se. But the last segment I want to deal with is mixing the two in terms of where do we see AI in 5 years' time? Like let's just say 2030, we're early 2026, so we still have 5 years, most of 5 years to head there. But we also started one of the AI conversation with AGI, right? And AGI is what I have learned or discovered, let me say, over the last year in particular, is AGI is different for different people, although it should be the same thing, right? But different people have a different understanding of what they call artificial general intelligence, right? So firstly, maybe what's your definition of AGI and where do you see in 2030 Votee being in 2030 and AI being in 2030 probably? So you can go with the AGI question, then we talk about where Votee and AI will be.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. AGI is defined pretty loosely.
Yeah.
And I also kind of approach it as a very sort of omnipresent sort of definition, which is, if you're smarter than humans, and you excel pretty much in every task, which we're kind of in some domains, we're already seeing that.
Correct.
So I think AGI in general is just more of a label for me at this moment. I think by 2030, won't be using that term anymore because I don't think intelligence is a feature anymore.
Okay.
It's just part of day-to-day usage. So I think AGI is a loose term, which we'll abandon in a few years, especially when everything we use has intelligence, and again, it's not a feature anymore. The second question is, where would Votee be? Or
where would Votee be, and where you see AI progressing?
Maybe I'll start with where AI will be progressing. So I think AI, where it is today, we're using a lot of autonomous agentic AI, for example, swarm agents. Yeah. And so that's today, and that's something that we've been building to some products or using that to build products. In 4 or 5 years' time, I think there's going to be a few things. One is it's going to be essentially essential need for citizens, so everybody will have access to it. 2 is it's going to be much more multimodal. We talk about robots and all that kind of stuff. I think we're still quite far away, but the other thing that's happening now is you have it competing a lot with software. Yeah. Right. So you see it eating software's lunch. Yeah. But it's also competing with labor as well. So we'll see more of that becoming again essential into what we do. We work with a lot of corporates and banks.
Okay.
Some financial institutions have 50 different projects, and that's still just a start. So I think if you see this year, next year will probably be 10x, especially in emerging markets. So multimodal, much more autonomous. It's going to be again essential need for every citizen. It kind of is at this moment, and so that's where I see AI, and also much more specialized as well. And for Votee, I think it's a little bit more clear as to where we want to be in 4 or 5 years. We want to be doing at least a couple hundred languages.
Okay.
We want to be not just in Southeast Asia and Africa, but we also want to be doing endangered languages. So in Canada alone, for example, there's 70 different languages that are indigenous to Aboriginals.
Yeah.
Right. So this is like Cree, Blackfoot, and all that kind of stuff. We want to be we have a social mission to do that as well. Preserve that. But again, preserving languages is not just like a social mission too, but unlocks a lot of new knowledge.
Yeah.
Things that we didn't know, but that was buried in cultures like the Aboriginals in Canada. That's a big unlock as well.
I said it's a great social mission, and I want to probably close with this question, which is becoming more. It's coming in for a lot of AI companies, right? Where recently you've had that conversation with Anthropic and OpenAI when it came to providing services for defense and surveillance, etc. And the principles that seem to be different, but now seem to be same based on statements recently in SAM. But there are going to be more of these both moral dilemmas as also ethical dilemmas that come in, right? Because sometimes you can say, I'm building a tech. It's a bit like internet, right? Building the internet. There can be a lot of immoral and unethical things that people are doing on the internet, but there is also the larger good that happens. But there are guardrails that come in. So how are you guys looking at that? I'm using the term loosely, guardrails and principles, and how do you see that going?
Yeah, so I don't think there's like a super regulation line that kind of regulates all domains at the same time. And I think that's also, it would stunt the growth of just kind of R&D and AI and stuff. Now, the way we approach it is by country, right? So Hong Kong has their own laws, and so you need to respect it. And I think they built the regulations for Hong Kong so Hong Kong can thrive on its own within their own sort of limits. So you can't take someone else's guidelines and put it on Hong Kong. And when we approach Indonesia, when we approach African nations, you also have to respect their own guidelines. So for us, in that sense, we kind of approach it by country or by jurisdiction. And then in terms of red lines for all, there is the red line for all, I think. And I think, and I think a lot of AI companies, including us, when we did our benchmark for Hong Kong, for example, we also add things like you can't, learn how to make, toxic weapons, or how do you do certain things.
Sure.
I think those are a red line for us. Now, in Sam and Dario's case, Anthropic and OpenAI, I think that's very specific to the US as well. But I do think that there is merit in not adding AI to, what they said they should be, for example, autonomous weapons and all that kind of stuff. I haven't studied that a lot, but I think there's a lot of merit in having a red line right there. So, but for us, there is no military in Hong Kong, we don't work with the military, so we don't have that dilemma. And
closing in, what is the most exciting thing that Votee is working on for 2026?
We're working on a few African nations. We're also working on Southeast Asia. So I think expanding into new markets is a very cool thing because you learn a lot about the culture. You learn a lot about sort of what they want to build and phase they are within their sovereign AI build.
Yeah.
In Hong Kong, we're piloting a few really cool things which will be used by corporates and banks. So in that sense, we see the latest technology being applied to real use case.
Okay.
That's very exciting. So I think both things, Hong Kong is very exciting. outside of Hong Kong is also very exciting.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This has been a really nice conversation. I'm sure we'll do a version 2 towards the end of the year, looking
Sure.
at what's been
Yeah,
happening
looking
and going
forward.
on. So thank you once again for joining our podcast. And audience, stay tuned for more such interesting conversations. Click like, subscribe, and follow us for more on YouTube, as also our LinkedIn pages. Once again, thank you to Mr. Park from Votee, and keep an eye out for what Votee is doing in the AI space in Hong Kong and beyond.
Thank you.
Thank you.